Greetings. Welcome to Eric's Angle, the podcast for Iowa State mathematics students. I am your host, Eric Weber, chair of the mathematics department at Iowa State University. Today's guest is a 2018 graduate art program, having earned degrees in mathematics, economics, and actuarial science. Her name is Aimee Rodgers, and she is Senior Actuarial Analyst based in Des Moines. While a student, Aimee was a leader of the Actuarial Science Club and was also a math and stats learning community peer mentor. Notably, she was the student marshal at the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences Fall 2018 commencement ceremony. There, she relayed the story of the advice that she received as a student to say yes to as many opportunities as you can, advice with which I agree. Please welcome Aimee Rodgers. Hi, Aimee. Thanks for appearing on Eric's Angle.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so why don't you tell us a little bit about your story?
Well, sure. Proud Iowa State alum here, born and raised in the state of Iowa. From maybe high school on, I was pretty confident that math was in my future. I wasn't sure exactly how that was going to play in with a career, but the more I learned about it and the more different fields were introduced to me through different math classes at Iowa State and Math 101, the very first intro math course you take at Iowa State that teaches you about careers, I kind of narrowed in on something that piqued my interest, which is actuarial science. And I've been an actuary for the past 5 years here after graduating in fall of 2018, and just been a really nice time so far. I think that it's a very interesting field for a variety of reasons. One is the relatively low stress compared to a lot of different fields. It is a desk job, which is lovely at the end of the day, but it's one that can be really rewarding, and it definitely pays well. So can't complain about that. Yeah, I feel very fortunate that in my high school stats class, we had some women from the local university, Drake University. They came in and talked about that they were actuaries, and I thought, well, if they're actuaries, maybe I can do it too. I hadn't met any other women that did it yet, so it was nice to be able to see that I wouldn't be the only one. Flash forward to now, a lot of the women I work with are actuaries, and my team is about half and half right now, which is really nice to see, people kind of breaking into the field. I currently work at a smaller company in Des Moines called Homesteaders, where we price pre-need funeral insurance, and it's a very rewarding field. It's a company that really cares about their customers and making sure that people's wishes are respected and fulfilled.
Great. So were you thinking that you would be an actuary like from the moment that you came to Iowa State University?
That's a good question. No, I kind of been toying with the idea since the people visited my statistics class, but I still wasn't fully convinced. My senior year, we actually were required to do an assignment where you have a mentor that is in a field that you're interested in, and I thought at the time, hey, maybe I could do some kind of teaching. I thought I'm pretty talkative. I could maybe be a teacher of sorts. And then I landed on high school teaching doesn't sound very fun because they don't want to be there. Maybe I'll be a college teacher or a professor. So I had a professor mentor. It was very interesting. I really enjoyed collaborating with her and learning about her research. But then once I got to Iowa State, I was in my Math 101 class, and I was learning more about what math research meant and how that might fit into my life. And I realized that, to get your master's or PhD, which is pretty necessary to be a professor, you have to do an awful lot of research, and I didn't envision that in my future. The more I learned about actuarial science, the more interested I got, and I did a lot of job shadowing to find, the kind of field that I was passionate in. I took some actuarial exams. They went great. So, the rest is kind of history. After my first internship, I was pretty sold.
Hmm. And what does your job look like now? What does your day-to-day activities look like?
That's a pretty common question. It's one I asked every actuary I job shadowed, and everyone's had a different answer. My current job, I do more of the, we'll call it pricing work. So basically making sure that our products not only are profitable, but make sense for the customers and we can sell them. So I find that very interesting, like the product ideation and making sure the product goes all the way from ideation to being on the market and making sure that we're maintaining it properly. All of that's pretty interesting to me. I get to collaborate a lot with other teams like legal and marketing and IT to make sure that the product is working correctly within our systems. And then sometimes with sales, even too, to make sure that the product is being sold appropriately. And every day is a little different, but in some, I look at a lot of Excel, I email a lot of people, and I basically do anything my boss thinks is worth our time.
So it sounds like you spend a fair amount of your time working alone, maybe solving problems, math style problems, and you also spend a lot of time talking to other people. Is that an accurate description of what your job looks like?
I'd say so. It's a good balance for me. It's not too much alone time that I feel that I'm stuck on my own island and no one is going to help me with the problems if I can't figure out a good solution. But it's enough time, talking to other people as well that keeps it interesting. I love explaining concepts to people. I like I said, I almost became a professor, but instead now I get to explain insurance products and make sure that no one is misquoting and misunderstanding. There's a lot of, does that make sense? But I think that there's a good balance in my current job. Some jobs, of course, as an actuary are a little more work on your own, try to find the solution. Don't talk with anyone until you have a deliverable. I have a lot more input and questions along the way. I was the kid in the math class that was always raising their hand saying, "Can you please explain that in a different way?" Or are you sure that's the only way we can solve this problem? So I tend to be very interactive when I'm problem solving, and I'm glad I found a way to translate that into my work.
Well, as a math teacher, I would say that I really like those kinds of students that ask a lot of questions and are very interactive. So I appreciate that.
Of course, yeah, it's fun.
When you're talking to people, like you're presenting projects or ideas or whatever, do you think that you were well prepared as a mathematics major, actuarial science major at Iowa State, or is that something that you were maybe not as well prepared for?
I think that the math major, along with the actuarial exam process, those two combined made it for a pretty well prepared, for me to be pretty well prepared. That is, that being said, I don't feel like the modeling software I use or the Excel, the more the technical tools, that was something I really had to develop on my own in my career. But I think that's pretty common. I'd highly recommend taking any kind of coding class. I took just one in college, and I'd say that that has been instrumentally more helpful than if I had taken no coding classes because every company uses a different coding language for this or that. And as an actuary, you tend to do at least a little bit of coding, depending on how much you like it. Um, I do a minimal amount, but I still need it to get by.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that there would be much more that Iowa State could have done to prepare me. My research projects were also very interesting at Iowa State, and I definitely used Excel more. But being in the real world, it's a different ball game with those kind of programs. There's no assignment that's going to be exactly what I needed. But overall, very prepared.
Mm-hmm. And you've mentioned to me that you were involved in quite a few activities while you were a student here. So do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I had a mindset of let's try anything at Iowa State and tried to say yes to as many opportunities as I could. Was started in student government, switched over to a sorority, founded a business fraternity, worked in a different volunteering club, just had a really nice time. I mentored math students that were under a couple years below me, And it's interesting now to see them in their careers too, which has been a really fun. I'd highly recommend being a math mentor if you can. And I think all of those opportunities together and meeting the people I did along the way is what shaped me into not only the career I have, but also the person I am today. And so I'd highly recommend getting out there and exploring different things that you're excited or passionate about, or maybe you just want to try once and then never go to another club meeting. That's fine too.
And any other pieces of recommendation for, or, advice for our students?
I'd say that, it is as a math major, you do tend to want to work on your own and solve your own problems. But I think the collaboration and learning how other people attack problems is very valuable. And I'd highly recommend at least trying to collaborate with your fellow math majors and working on homework assignments on occasion together. The people in the math department are all fantastic, and the professors are too. Um, it's a really nice opportunity to be at Iowa State, such a big campus, and the connections you make, you will run into down the road. I've ran into, a bunch of different people that I went to school with, and after, in our careers, and making sure that each other, we're all supported and we all got through it all together through the trenches, so to say.
Mm-hmm.
And another piece of advice, I guess, was I really, really loved using office hours to, if I didn't understand something and it just was not making sense during class, the professors are there during office hours for a reason. And not very many people utilize those office hours. So I would highly recommend that. And I know it's kind of cliche, but it was definitely helpful to me.
I'm really glad to hear that. I mean, I definitely urge students to go to professors' office hours as much as they possibly can. And in fact, I don't teach as chair now, but when I was teaching regularly, I would really try to get my own students in my own classes to come to my office hours. And there were always one or two that would come with some regularity, but not as many as I would like. So I'm glad that you said that for our current students to heed that advice.
Well, definitely. And sometimes with everyone having different methods of how you think about things and attack problems, sometimes on an exam or a quiz, I might have seen the problem in a different light than the professor intended. And when you approach them about that on occasion, maybe you get a point back or two just for thinking outside the box. It's good to have a nice rapport with your professors, and I saw them all as mentors too, which is a nice place to be in.
Yeah, that's great. So you mentioned also something of the idea that maybe there isn't always just one solution or one answer. And you found that in your work that there's not always just a singular solution the way we kind of train our mathematics students to think?
Yes, very much so. I find that even, actuaries are all trained basically the same way. We all have the same credentialing process that we go through to be qualified to do what we do. And yet every single actuary I worked with has a different way of how they would solve a problem and how they would present those findings as well. That's another facet to why, why would you ever have to do the math if it's never communicated out to the world? I think that that's pretty important is to be able to do that side of it. So yes, I think there are a lot of ways you could solve different problems. I find that every single day, people on my team would attack a problem in a different way than I might. But that being said, are both solutions correct? Yes, technically, hopefully.
Yeah. So what would you say is the biggest surprise so far with your career trajectory?
That's a good question. The actuarial exams are daunting. I won't lie.
Mm,
They take a long time and they are so rewarding when you pass and so defeating at times when you fail. I'd never failed an exam in my life until I started taking these exams because, you think you put in the effort that you should pass. And truly, that is how most of it goes. But that's not always how it's going to go. And that's, you have to be okay to accept defeat. So I think sometimes in my career, that's been a surprise to me at times. That's if you don't do things correctly the first time or figuring out how to learn from your mistakes and not dwell on them. I think that's a really big thing that has impacted my career trajectory more than I thought. So I used to be kind of get the task done, hope it was correct, maybe look it back over. I'm now more of the mindset of get the task done, pause, wait on it for a little bit, look at it again. You don't have to rush to the solution. You can kind of enjoy finding it along the way.
Hmm. That that sounds like a really good lesson to have learned. I think that's very good
Yes,
for our
learned it a few
students.
times. It
Yes.
takes some time to learn.
Yes. Well, it does. Yes. Learning requires repetition, unfortunately, either good or bad. It requires some repetition. Well, Aimee, I want to thank you again for appearing on this podcast.
Well, I really appreciate it. It's great to be able to talk to math students and make sure that they know, there are careers out there for them. No matter how many times people say, what could you possibly do with that degree? There are a lot of things you could do with that degree. And I think exploring the different facets of how maybe your brain works. And, if your brain works really well with coding, then that's a great facet to explore too. The math connection is, I think, the basis of all other things, and just finding how you apply it to the world is, I mean, it's difficult, but once you do, it's very rewarding. So stick at it.
Mhm. Well, thanks again, Aimee.